everyone, and welcome back to Rules as Written Character Builds. My name is Zach, and on this channel I make character builds for 2024 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, aiming to strike a balance between theme and combat capability. I also try to play into the backwards compatible nature of 2024 5th edition, so I do use features, spells, subclasses from prior to 2024 as long as they haven't been reprinted. I was doing some reading on a thrown weapon build, and I found that there's actually a lot of features that unexpectedly apply to thrown weapons, namely the Paladin Smite spells, and specifically the Spores, Druid, Symbiotic Entity. Both of these specify that they apply to melee weapon attacks, and thrown is simply a property of melee weapons that allow you to make a ranged attack, but they are still melee weapons when used in this way. Therefore, we can throw weapons and use any feature or spell that applies to melee weapon attacks. Now, as you probably already know, Druid and Paladin isn't a very synergetic multiclass. Luckily, however, there are Ranger subclasses that grant Paladin Smite spells, so we're going to be using one of those today. We also are going to be throwing daggers, and we don't want to deal with that little D4 damage dice, so we're going to take a healthy scoop of monk levels so we can take advantage of the scaling martial arts damage dice that applies to daggers. So, this week, introducing the Plague Thrower. With these videos, I focus only on features that either play into the character fantasy or are necessary for the mechanical play of the build. For this reason, you'll often see me skip over class features. That's just me trying to stay on course and keep these videos down to a reasonable length. Now, for this build, I didn't have a specific species in mind, and whenever that's the case, I just default to human to pick up an extra origin feat. If you guys have a different idea, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to see what kind of species y'all came up with. But for me today, we're going human, picking up the extra origin feat, and we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to take tough for an extra 2 hit points per level. Now, in regards to our ability scores, we are going to prioritize, of course, dexterity and wisdom. We also want to have a decent constitution for some hit points, so we're going to go with this ability score spread: a strength of 8, a dexterity of 15, a constitution of 14, an intelligence of 8, a wisdom of 15, and a charisma of 10. I really like the aesthetic of a low strength and intelligence for this build, sort of representative of the fact that our character is a harbinger of disease and death. So maybe our body and our mind are a little bit withered. Our character is still powerful due to that almost symbiotic disease that we carry. Now, for the background, we're going to be going with Wayfarer. This lets us increase our dexterity by +2 for a 17 and our wisdom by +1 for a 16, and it gives us the lucky origin feat. You have a number of luck points equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain expended luck points when you finish a long rest. When you roll a d20 for a d20 test, you can spend 1 luck point to give yourself advantage on the roll. When a creature rolls a d20 for an attack roll against you, you can spend 1 luck point to impose disadvantage on that roll. Equipment-wise, we won't need any armor, and our throwing weapons that we're going to be using, like I said earlier, are daggers. Unfortunately, we aren't picking up any features in this build that are going to let those daggers return to us after we make the thrown attack, so we're going to need to stock up on them. However, monks start with 5 daggers in their starting equipment, and the Wayfarer background does give us 2 additional daggers. So we're starting with 7 daggers. Make sure after combat you pick up all the daggers that you throw, and if you encounter enemies who have daggers, loot them after combat is over. Stock up on as many as you can, because we're going to be tossing out a good number with this build. Alright, let's check out the roadmap for this build. It's a bit of a complicated one. We're integrating 3 classes, so let's check it out. Level 1 will be Monk level 1. Level 2 will be Ranger level 1. Levels 3 through 6 will be Monk levels 2 through 5. 7 through 11 will be Druid levels 1 through 4. 11 through 12 will be Ranger levels 2 through 3. 13 through 19 will be Monk levels 6 through 12. And level 20 will be Ranger level 4. So we're starting in Monk for martial arts, then a quick step into Ranger for Hunter's Mark and Weapon Mastery. Then we stick to Monk until we pick up extra attack. We spend the next several levels locking down our subclasses from Druid and then Ranger before finishing our Monk levels for some more focus points and ending with Monk 12 and Ranger 4 for 2 epic boons. Now, like I always say on this channel, epic boons are now a type of feat which require character level 19. And since ability score improvements allow you to take any feat with which you meet the requirements, you can line up 2 ability score improvements at level 19 and 20 to take 2 epic boons. For instance, Monk level 12 and Ranger level 4. Alright, so we're starting out in Monk level 1. We're picking up Martial Arts and Unarmored Defense. That's the basics for Monk combat. Dexterity-based unarmed attacks and Monk weapon attacks, bonus action unarmed strikes, and unarmored defense. And daggers are monk weapons, so right off the bat, we're dealing 1d6 damage instead of the normal 1d4 damage dice of the dagger. Then we'll move into Ranger 1 for spellcasting, favored enemy, and weapon mastery. Being a ranger, we'll have 2 spell slots at level 1, and we'll mainly use these for the Hunter's Mark spell, which works fantastically with the monk class, thanks to all the attacks that we can make with our action and our bonus action. Speaking of Hunter's Mark, we also get favored enemy at this level. You always have the Hunter's Mark spell prepared. You can cast it twice without expending a spell slot, and you regain all uses of this ability when you finish a long rest. The number of times you can cast this spell without a spell slot increases when you reach certain ranger levels, as shown in the favored enemy column of the ranger features table. Along with our 2 spell slots, we can cast Hunter's Mark 4 times per day. Plenty of times at this level to use it in all of the important encounters during an adventuring day. And lastly, we're going to get 2 weapon masteries from Ranger. First and foremost, we're going to take mastery with daggers, which gives us the Nick mastery property. When you make the extra attack of the light property, you can make it as part of the attack action instead of as a bonus action. You can make this extra attack only once per turn. So now with this property, we can make 2 dagger attacks with the same action. This doesn't specify that it must be a melee attack, so we can throw 2 daggers with 1 action. For our second weapon mastery, there isn't a specific one that we need. Let me know in the comments which one you would go for. We will be taking Way of the Kensai Monk later, which makes us choose a melee and a ranged weapon that will get some extra benefits while using. We're picking the dagger for our melee weapon, and we're also using it to make ranged attacks, so we're not really going to need a ranged weapon, but I would say just line up your weapon mastery now with whichever ranged weapon you want to take for Way of the Kensai. Alright, now we're going to head back into Monk to secure our subclass and extra attack. Monk 2 through 5 will pick up Monk's Focus, Way of the Kensai, an ability score improvement, and extra attack. So character level 3, Monk level 2, gives us Monk's Focus. This is the iconic Monk bonus action feature. Step of the Wind, Patient Defense, Flurry of Blows. After that, it's into Monk level 3 for our subclass, and like I said, we are going with Way of the Kensai. This subclass has us choose 2 weapons, a melee and a ranged weapon, to count as our Kensai weapons, and we get 2 different benefits while using them. Agile Parry. If you make an unarmed strike as part of the attack action on your turn and are holding a Kensai weapon, you can use it to defend yourself if it is a melee weapon. You gain a +2 bonus to armor class until the start of your next turn, while the weapon is in your hand and you aren't incapacitated. This is a nice one for us. We'll be throwing our daggers, but if someone gets in close, there's no reason not to throw out an unarmed strike as well in exchange for a +2 to our armor class, especially once we get extra attack, and we can still then go ahead and make 2 dagger attacks, taking advantage of Nick. Our unarmed strikes are always going to be dealing the same damage as our dagger strikes. Secondly is Kensai Shot, and this is the big one I wanted here. You can use a bonus action on your turn to make your ranged attacks with a Kensai weapon more deadly. When you do so, any target you hit with a ranged attack using a Kensai weapon takes an extra 1d4 damage of the weapon's type. You retain this benefit until the end of the current turn. While this one says that it works with ranged attacks, it doesn't specifically say attacks with a ranged weapon. So our thrown weapons are going to benefit from this. After applying Hunter's Mark to our target, this will be our main use of our bonus action every round of combat. Making 2 attacks on our attack action and adding an extra 1d4 to each of them is pretty nice. Kensai Shot plus Hunter's Mark on a dagger attack brings the total damage dice of that attack to 2d6 and 1d4. With 2 attacks on our action, I think that's pretty good for a level 4 character. So next we'll be on to Monk level 4 for an ability score improvement, and we are picking up Piercer to improve our dagger attacks. Increase your strength or dexterity by 1 to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals piercing damage, you can re-roll one of the attack's damage dice, and you must use the new roll. When you score a critical hit that deals piercing damage to a creature, you can roll 1 additional damage die when determining the extra piercing damage the target takes. We're going to bump our dexterity to 18 for the +4 modifier, and our final monk level at this time is Monk level 5, character level 6, and this is where we're going to get extra attacks, so we can now make 3 thrown dagger attacks on our action. Our martial arts damage dice also improves at this level to 1d8, so with Hunter's Mark up and Kensai Shot active, our attacks are going to deal 1d8, 1d6, and 1d4. 2 of them will be dealing +4 damage on top of that. The Nick attack, of course, is not going to benefit from our dexterity modifier because we don't have the 2-weapon fighting style. Next, we're going to step into Druid for a few levels to grab the Circle of Spores subclass. Druid levels 1 through 4 will get Spellcasting, Wild Shape, Circle of Spores, and an ability score improvement. Character level 7, we are stepping into Druid 1. This adds to our Ranger spellcasting to get some more spell slots. We're now a multi-classed spellcaster, so you're going to want to refer to the multi-classed spell slot progression table to determine your amount of spell slots. Basically, it's Ranger level divided by 2 plus Druid level. Now, Druid level 2 brings us Wild Shape, We aren't really playing into that feature at all, but I do think that the aesthetic of shape-shifting into animals and then having those animals be somewhat decayed, diseased, is pretty cool vibes for this character. At Druid level 3, we'll get our subclass, the Circle of Spores. The first feature this gives us is called Halo of Spores. Starting at 3rd level, you are surrounded by invisible necrotic spores that are harmless until you unleash them on a creature nearby. When a creature you can see moves into a space within 10 feet of you or starts its turn there, you can use your reaction to deal 1d4 necrotic damage to that creature, unless it succeeds on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC. I'd rather use deflect attacks from Monk on our reaction to stay defensively responsible, but this feature is a good way to de-incentivize creatures from moving in close so we can keep making our attacks at range. Next, we'll pick up the Symbiotic Entity feature. Also at 3rd level, you gain the ability to channel magic into your spores. As an action, you can expend a use of your Wild Shape feature to awaken those spores. Rather than transforming into a beast form, you gain 4 temporary hit points for each level you have in this class. While this feature is active, you gain the following benefits. When you deal your Halo of Spores damage, roll the damage die a second time and add it to the total. Your melee weapon attacks deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage to any target they hit. These benefits last for 10 minutes, until you lose all these temporary hit points, or until you use your Wild Shape again. So this is the main feature that we came into Druid for. Another dice to pile onto our dagger attacks. Notice once again that this says your melee weapon attacks. Daggers are melee weapons, despite the fact that we are using them to make a ranged attack. They don't become ranged weapons for that attack. They are still melee weapons. Now, we want to preserve these hit points to make sure we don't lose the damage early. Luckily, we have deflect attacks from Monk to reduce the damage we take from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing attacks as a reaction. I would also pick up Absorb Elements with our Druid spells to give us a defensive reaction against elemental attacks as well. Now, Symbiotic Entity does require an action to activate, but it lasts for a pretty good time, 10 minutes, so we should always attempt to activate it before combat breaks out, because we don't want to waste our first round action on this. For instance, if you're going to enter a room in a dungeon that you know has enemies, or if your party is about to ambush an enemy, make sure you use this feature ahead of time. The feature does not say that it creates any sound, light, any effects like that, so it shouldn't break stealth. And for our last Druid level 4, we'll get an ability score improvement. We want to max out our dexterity and wisdom, so let's start with wisdom because of a feature that we're about to get from Ranger that benefits from a good wisdom. So increase wisdom by +2 with this ability score improvement, reaching an 18 for the +4 modifier. This now puts our armor class up to an 18 thanks to our +4 in both wisdom and dexterity, and our unarmored defense feature. So we are taking 2 more Ranger levels right now for a fighting style and our subclass. Ranger levels 2 and 3 will pick up a fighting style and the Hollow Warden subclass. First off, at Ranger level 2, character level 11, we are picking up the Thrown Weapon fighting style. When you hit a ranged attack roll using a weapon that has the Thrown property, you gain a +2 bonus to the damage roll. Since we are using the light weapon property, you could go for 2-weapon fighting and get your dexterity modifier as damage on that nick attack, but with 3 attacks per turn, the +2 damage on all 3 of them adds up to slightly more damage. Then next at Ranger level 3, we'll get our subclass, and we're going with the fairly recent Unearthed Arcana horror subclass, the Hollow Warden. This gives us an extended spell list, which at this point gives us the Wrathful Smite spell. This spell is a bonus action that you activate when you hit with a melee weapon or an unarmed strike. The target takes an extra 1d6 necrotic damage from the attack, and it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or have the frightened condition until the spell ends. At the end of each of its turns, the frightened target repeats the save, ending the spell on itself on a success. The damage increases by 1d6 for each spell slot level above 1. Now, just like with Symbiotic Entity, even though we are making a ranged attack, the thrown dagger is still a melee weapon, so we can smite with it. Now, noticeably, this bonus action conflicts with Kensai's Shot. Now, this spell only adds 1d6 to one attack, whereas Kensai's Shot adds 1d4 to all 3 of our attacks. However, combining 3 Ranger levels with 4 Druid levels, we actually have 3rd level spell slots, so we can smite for 3d6 damage. So that damage is slightly better than the Kensai Shot damage. So what I would do with this build is, in important fights, I would smite using 3rd level spell slots. And then once I'm all out of 3rd level spell slots, I would use Kensai Shot instead. Now, this subclass gets us an interesting ability that modifies our Hunter's Mark spell, Wrath of the Wild. You gain a bonus to your armor class equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of +1. When an enemy starts their turn within a 10-foot emanation originating from you, it must make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, it can either take an action or a bonus action on this turn, but not both. So these benefits apply to you while you're concentrating on Hunter's Mark. And the AC buff is massive. Thanks to our unarmored defense, we're already adding our wisdom modifier to our armor class. So with this feature, we're now actually adding it twice to our armor class, which puts us at a 22 AC. All right, that's it for Ranger for now. We are going to head back into Monk to stack up some extra focus points. Monk levels 6 through 12 will get 1 with the blade, evasion, an ability score improvement, heightened focus, and an ability score improvement. So at Monk level 6, our Kensai subclass gets another feature, 1 with the blade. At 6th level, you extend your ki into your Kensai weapons, granting you the following benefits. Your attack with your Kensai weapons count as magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. When you hit a target with a Kensai weapon, you can spend 1 ki point to cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target equal to your martial arts die. You can use this feature only once on each of your turns. Death Strike is a nice little ability for some burst damage. Alongside an upcasted Wrathful Smite, we actually have some decent ability to throw burst damage out with this build. Monk level 7, character level 14 gets us evasion. When you're subject to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw, and only half damage if you fail. Then at Monk level 8, we'll get another ability score improvement. Because of the epic boons we plan to take, that will be increasing our dexterity. We are going to want to max out our wisdom first right now. So use this ability score improvement for +2 to our wisdom, to bring it up to 20 for the +5 modifier. Thanks to Unarmored Defense and Armor of the Ancients, when we have our Hunter's Mark active, we'll have an armor class of 24. Now, our next pertinent feature from Monk comes at level 10, character level 17, and it's called Heightened Focus. This improves our Monk's focus features, Patient Defense, Step of the Wind, and Flurry of Blows. Most notably, our Flurry of Blows now makes 3 attacks instead of 2. So if we are in melee, using our Nick Mastery for 3 attacks on our action, and improved Flurry of Blows for another 3 on our bonus action, we can make a total of 6 attacks in one turn. Monk level 11 improves our martial arts damage dice to a d10, so our daggers now deal 1d10 damage on a hit. And lastly, our final Monk level 12, will get an ability score improvement, and we are now eligible for epic boons. And we're going to be going with the boon of Irresistible Offense. Increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 30. The bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage you deal always ignores resistance. When you roll a 20 on the d20 for an attack roll, you can deal extra damage to the target equal to the ability score increased by this feat. The extra damage's type is the same as the attack's type. Since we already have Piercer, this is furthering our piercing weapon abilities. And the Overwhelming Strike portion that adds damage to crits, along with Deft Strike and Wrathful Smite, our ability to pump some extra damage on a critical hit is impressive. Increase our dexterity score with this feat to 19. And then at our final level, we are going with Ranger level 4 for another ability score improvement, and we'll take our second epic boon. And I wanted to go with the boon of Recovery. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 30. When you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you can drop to 1 hit point instead and regain a number of hit points equal to half your hit point maximum. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. You have a pool of 10 d10s. As a bonus action, you can expend dice from the pool, roll those dice, and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll's total. You regain all expended dice when you finish a long rest. I mainly like this one for the Last Stand feature. With our Plague Bearer aesthetic, the unkillable nature of that feature plays well for us. Increase our dexterity to 20 for the +5 modifier. This also increases our armor class, so along with our improved Hunter's Mark, we are now looking at a 25 armor class. Not bad. And that's the build. So this build is all about improving throwing weapon damage. Thanks to being a monk, our dagger attacks are already improved. Instead of using the d4 damage dice, we'll get a d6 at level 1, a d8 at level 6, and a d10 at level 18. We get to stack some extra damage on those attacks as well. At level 2, we get Hunter's Mark for an extra d6 against a single target. At level 4, we'll get Kensai's Shot for an extra 1d4 on all of our ranged attacks. Then at level 9, we'll get our Druid subclass, and we'll unlock Symbiotic Entity for an extra 1d6 necrotic damage on all of those attacks as well. After adding all that extra damage, we then start to grow into some burst damage. We'll get Wrathful Smite at character level 12 for an extra 3d6 on a single attack if we use a 3rd level spell slot. Deft Strike at character level 13 gets us an extra 1d8 once per turn in exchange for a key point, and that does become a d10 once our martial arts damage dice increases again. And then at character level 19, we'll get the boon of Irresistible Offense for some extra damage on critical hits. But it's not all about the offense with this build. We have some good defense as well. We'll get Deflect Attacks at character level 4, Armor of the Ancients from Hollow Warden at level 12 to double up our Wisdom modifier on our armor class. We will get Evasion at level 14 and the Boon of Recovery at level 20 to resist death once per long rest. So that's everything. Solid damage with thrown weapons, extra attacks up close, smites, multiple tools to defend ourselves. Thanks so much for checking out this week's video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the build and any features or spells I might have missed that would improve the build. Come back every Monday for some more Dungeons & Dragons content. Thanks again, and I'll see y'all next week.